Okay, so today we'll talk about Psalm 20, why we have it in the davening. But before we do that, since today is the second day of Sivan, it's a very significant day. So we'll talk about something else that will be carrying us through next week, through Thursday, which is that we don't say Tachnun. Yesterday was Rosh Chodesh. Obviously, that's a no Tachnun day. But starting from yesterday all the way through next Thursday, I believe it is, which is the 12th of Sivan, there's no Tachnun. The reason is as follows. So today, as I mentioned, is a significant day, the 2nd of Sivan. Basically, the first 6 days of the month of Sivan are all very special and unique because on Rosh Chodesh, the Jewish people, on Rosh Chodesh Sivan, the 1st of Sivan, that's when the people arrived at Mount Sinai, in the Sinai desert, and they camped at the foot of the mountain like one man with one heart, in a great show of unity. So it's a very auspicious time, and especially a good time for enhancing and increasing our unity and our brotherhood and love for each other. Okay, so that happened yesterday. Today, the second day of Sivan, is the day that God said that I will make you for me a nation of priests and a holy nation. I will make you a nation of priests and a holy nation, which is obviously significant, something that the Jews immediately started working on. And then every day, once they arrived at Sinai, all the way up till the giving of the Torah on the 6th day, which we're going to celebrate on Shavuos, on Thursday night, on Friday and Shabbos. So up until that day, the Jews were busy preparing to receive the Torah. So they were told today that they're going to be a holy nation, a nation of priests. Then they're commanded the following day not to go up onto the mountain. And so they build a barrier not to go up to the mountain. Then they're instructed to separate from their wives and to ready themselves, to purify themselves and be ready for the day of the giving of the Torah. So every day was another step, another stage in the development or in the preparation of the people for the receiving of the Torah on Shavuot. So therefore, since every day something is another very, very monumental event that occurred, so therefore these are special days and days that we don't say Tachnun. After Shavuos is over, we have another 5 days that we don't say Tachnun. Altogether, because we have a 2-day holiday in Israel, it's a 1-day holiday. We have 2 days. So for us, it's the 2 days of Shavuos plus another 5 days. In Israel, it's the day of Shavuos and the following 6 days, which is a week long of not saying Tachnun. So it's starting from on Shavuot, we have 7 days where we won't say Tachnun because Shavuot is one of the pilgrimage holidays. And when you came up to the temple, when you came up to Jerusalem for the holiday to celebrate, you'd have to bring a sacrifice, a special pilgrimage sacrifice that was brought on all 3 pilgrimage holidays, on Sukkot, on Passover, and on Shavuot. And the thing is that Shavuot is 1 day in the temple. And for all the pilgrims coming up to the temple, it's not possible that everybody can bring their sacrifices all that on that 1 day. So there was a 7-day sort of grace period for which people can do that, called Yemei Tashlumin, days that they were able to finish bringing their sacrifices. So because of that celebration, so we don't say Tachnun all the way through the first 12 days of Shavuot, of Sivan, of the month of Sivan. Okay, now on to Psalm 20. So in our davening, after the Amidah, we talked about the Tachnun, why we say Tachnun. We talked about the Torah reading. Ashrei, we've talked about when we spoke about the verses of praise, so we're not going to go back into Ashrei now. But the next thing is Psalm 20. Lam Natseach Yancha. Now, Psalm 20 is put here in the davening at this part, at this stage, because Psalm 20, even though we call it Psalm 20, but it could technically be considered Psalm 19. The sages in the Talmud discuss that the first 2 Psalms in the book of Psalms, Psalms chapters 1 and 2, are actually one Psalm that were later separated. So, the sages, whenever we need it to be 2, we make it 2. We need it to be 1, we can make it 1. But the point is that there's, according to one counting, Psalm 20 is actually Psalm 19. And so therefore, it would be appropriate to recite this psalm, which is King David praying to God after 18 psalms where he praises God. So then he comes to Psalm 19, the 19th psalm, where he starts asking God to answer on the day that he calls. And so we too, just as we finished reciting the 18 blessings of the Amidah, and by the way, it's Psalm 20, which is Psalm 19, but it's also, we have the Amidah, it's 18 blessings, which is also 19. Either way, it lines up that Psalm 20 should come after the Shemona Esrei, after the Amidah and the 18 blessings. Now in Psalm 20, obviously it's a very special psalm. It's a psalm that generally people would recite traditionally when people are in crisis or in trouble. People need a refuah shalema, whenever there's some kind of distress, Psalm 20 is always one of the first to be recited. If you're praying for somebody that's not well, Psalm 20 is your go-to psalm. That's the first one you're going to turn to, because Psalm 20 is a very powerful psalm. King David composes it. It's not clear exactly for what purpose. There are a few different reasons, either because it was recited when they went out to war, when he led people into battle, when he stayed back and other people went into battle. The Levites said it when David went into battle. At any rate, it's a psalm that is very powerful, asking God to protect us in our time of our distress. And so Psalm 20, also interesting that Psalm 20 has, if you don't include the first verse, Lamanatseach Mizmor LeDavid, which is sort of an introduction to the psalm, you've got a psalm that has 9 verses. 9 we know is the number of truth, because emet, right? The word emet, which means true, is if you count it in small numbers, so Aleph is 1, Mem is 4 as opposed to 40, and Taf is 4 as opposed to 400. So you get 4 plus 4 plus 1, you get 9. And we know the number 9, whenever you multiply 9, you're always going to get the end result will always equal 9. So 9 represents truth. It has 70 words, which correspond to the 70 souls that came down with Jacob into Egypt, the descent of the Jewish people into Egypt, which tells us that this psalm has the power to release us from captivity, from our servitude and our enslavement to our bodies, to our physical bodies, our own personal Egypts. And it has 310 letters. 310 is the amount of worlds that it says that God is going to grant the righteous in the world to come. That he's going to give us Shai, 310 worlds in the world to come. So that means that we have that capacity to find truth, to free ourselves from the confines of Egypt, and to liberate God, as it were, also from the limitations of Egypt, from the constrictions and the strictures of exile, because God is there with us. And finally, to reach that state of righteous, where God will grant us all 310 worlds for each and every one of us. Another interesting thing, if you want to take some time and take a look, Psalm 20 doesn't have the letter Tes. The letter Tes doesn't appear in Psalm 20. So the Rekeach, one of the great sages, says that the reason for that is because there are 10 things that inhibit our prayers from ascending on high. And so this psalm is so powerful, doesn't have the letter Tes to tell us that those things can't interfere and block the prayer when we recite Psalm 20 from going up. Another interesting thing is that in Psalm 20 we say, "May the Lord answer you," right? Not when the Lord answer you. Whatever. The point is that there's I'm already forgetting. I think it's "May the Lord answer you" means that you're praying for somebody else, and that shows us that is an indication of the tradition that we have, that when we're in times of need, we turn to other people to pray on our behalf as well. Certainly to the righteous, to tzaddik, right, to the Rebbe, and so on and so forth. That is alluded to also in this psalm. Why don't we say it? Why do we omit it on a day that we don't say Tachanun? Because it says Yancha Hashem b'yom tzara, on the day God should answer you on the day of your distress. And a day that we don't say Tachanun is not a day of distress, so therefore we don't include it in the prayer. However, as you noticed, we say it when we don't include it in the prayer. We say it as first psalm before we say the daily psalms. That was instituted by the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, who really encouraged and sort of institutionalized that the reciting of the Tehillim as it's divided into the days of the month. And so every day of the month we recite another section of Tehillim. And he also instituted, it's part of that process, that if we don't say Psalm 20 in the davening, we should say it at the beginning of our daily Tehillim recital.